Hello YouTube, Bane666 here. So this episode I'm going to have another look at Go Fem Yourself, and this time she's talking about the Proud Boys. So before we get to the video, let me just make 3 points. The first one's a very simple one. If you are watching this and you live in a Western democracy, then there is no fucking need to use violence to resolve political differences. We have free speech, well, kind of in most places. We have the right to vote. We can express our opinions. We can challenge other people's ideas. And we can either agree or disagree or change people's minds without throwing bricks at their heads and punching them in the fucking face. Now, maybe if you're living in a dictatorship somewhere, then maybe the only way to resolve political differences might be some form of violence, depending on the actual circumstances, of course. But in Western democracies, there's no fucking excuse. Second point, Antifa has been committing violent acts for a couple of years now. And it amazes me that people like Go Fem Yourself, who are more than willing to condemn the Proud Boys for their violence, and, that's a fair point, but unfortunately she doesn't apply the same rules to Antifa. Apparently they get a free pass. Now my third point before we get to the video is the Proud Boys would not exist if it was not for extremists like Antifa. And unfortunately, extremists, be they on the left or the right or whatever, breed other extremists on the other side. Now, it is debatable whether the Proud Boys are as extreme as Antifa. From what I've seen, I don't believe they are. But at the same time, let me stress once again, I don't support any form of political violence in Western democracies. I don't care if you're from the left or the right, or you're an atheist, or a Christian, or a Muslim, or you're pro-choice, or anti-abortion, or a feminist, or anti-feminist, or MRA, or whatever. I don't give a fuck what label you use. I don't give a fuck what group you belong to. There is no excuse in Western democracies. Anyway, let's get stuck into the video.
By now, I'm sure everyone has heard about the Pride Boys. Gavin McInnes gang, as he calls it, more like a group of thugs who go around beating up people. The members of the gangs claim that they protect the population from Antifa.
Okay, so from memory, this was the first time I ever heard the name Antifa.
There, she joins us now. What's going on, Kyung?
Well, Anderson, what you're seeing behind me is quite a bit of commotion. This is an event at Berkeley where Milo Yiannopoulos, who is known as an internet troll, a self-proclaimed internet troll, a very provocative speaker, he was invited here to the campus. And you can see from the reaction, I'm going to step out of the shot here. What is happening here is that these are student protesters, some anarchists, from what I can gather, and trying to breach the building right now. Oh! Back up! Watch out!
All right, come on. Let's go.
Calm down. So we're trying to...
We're backing up.
So firing back.
We're backing up.
Kyung, can you explain what just happened there?
Turn. What you can see, Anderson, is they're trying to disperse the crowd. The police are trying to disperse the crowd. I don't have any idea how many people are here, but you can certainly feel that there's a lot of tension.
Yeah.
From what
Kyung,
I can tell, police officers who are dressed in riot gear are just trying to keep this building where this event is supposed to be happening secure. What we saw are some of the people taking up barricades and trying to ram through windows. And then we're going to try to get a little bit closer again.
Okay, Kyung, if you can just explain, if you can kind of give us the lay of the land. This is, if you're just...
But they attend all sorts of events, peaceful protests, and they beat up just about anyone that they feel like, it seems. Recently, we've heard in the news about the New York almost fucking riot when Gavin and his Proud Boys decided to provoke some guys in the streets and then proceed to beating the shit out of everyone.
Oh, they provoked some guys in the streets and then just beat the shit out of everyone. Yeah, that sounds like a fair representation of what happened. In fact, let's go and listen to what the Young Turks said, because they actually reported that far more fairly than what's been represented there. You know you're an extremist if you make the Young Turks look fair and reasonable, by the way. I just want to put that out there.
There was, unfortunately, a violent situation following the event at the Metropolitan Republican Club. The Proud Boys left the event, and as they were leaving, surveillance footage shows a member of possibly Antifa. All we know right now is for sure they were protesters. We believe they might be members of Antifa. One of them threw a bottle or some object at the Proud Boys, and then that led to a physical altercation. We have the surveillance footage for you, so let's take a quick look at that.
So the guys in the mass are the counter protesters. They throw something, and now the Proud Boys guys in the red hats, I mean, this is absurd. They have uniforms on both sides, right? And then they get into a fight, and then there's a lot more Proud Boy guys there because they just had an event. There's dozens and dozens of them. So they take control of the situation and start beating down what are presumably the Antifa guys. And of course, once they got them down, kicking them, stomping them, punching them over and over and over again, because that's who they are.
Now, following this incident, the very first thing that happened was the cops arrested 3 of the protesters. And I believe that that was the right thing to do. Don't throw things, don't physically assault anyone. If you do, you should be arrested. That is the law. However, the Proud Boys faced absolutely no arrests, no charges, no nothing until there was pressure from the city council and also Andrew Cuomo. They were essentially telling the NYPD, you need to do something about these white nationalists that have been going around the country brawling with people. And there have been multiple stories involving the Proud Boys doing just that. And so the NYPD essentially says now that they are looking to charge 9 of them, and they're asking for help identifying them. They've posted images of various members of the Proud Boys online, and they're hoping to find these people. Now,
possibly Antifa. I mean, you know, we can't really be sure, right? I mean, sure, they're dressed like Antifa, but maybe it's not Antifa. Quite possibly Gavin McInnes pissed off a ninja clan, and they came over and they ran out of throwing stars, so instead they were throwing bottles. I mean, I guess that might be possible, but yeah, somehow I think Antifa might be a better explanation. It's always interesting when the Young Turks talk about a particular group or individual on the left. They'll always use cautionary language, possibly, allegedly. But if you're not on the left, then yeah, it's most definitely that particular person or group. No fucking doubt whatsoever. But now we have a little bit more context. Now we know that Antifa threw bottles, or a bottle at least, one, at the Proud Boys, and that led to the brawl. So let's refresh our memories of what exactly Go Fem Yourself's version of these events are, because it's very interesting.
Recently, we've heard in the news about the New York almost fucking riot when Gavin and his Proud Boys decided to provoke some guys in the streets and then proceed to beating the shit out of everyone.
Now, her language is very, very revealing here. She says Gavin and the Proud Boys provoked some guys in the street and then proceeded to beat the shit out of everyone. It's very interesting that she uses the word provoked. Now, if the Proud Boys just beat the shit out of everyone, then why would she use the word provoked? Unless, of course, she knows that the Proud Boys were responding to something. She knows that Antifa threw the first punch. Well, alright, technically it was a bottle, but you get my point. So she knows that they threw the first bottle, or the first punch, and that the Proud Boys were responding to it, and she's claiming that Antifa were provoked because she's excusing the fact that they started the violence. Otherwise, why use the word provoked? Provoked how? In what way? To do what? So basically what we've learnt so far is Antifa can do whatever the fuck they want. They can be as violent as they want. And that's fine, right? Because, hey, they were provoked into it somehow. Apparently if someone calls you a name, it's perfectly reasonable to throw a bottle at their head. But, you know, fighting back and responding to that makes you a thug. But we've heard Go Fem Yourselves version of events, and we've heard the Young Turks version of events. I think it would only be fair if we heard from Gavin McInnes himself. Now, this is rather a long clip, but I do want to include the entire thing for proper context.
All right, so here's where we're going to bring in Gavin McInnes. He was the keynote speaker at that event. Gavin is also host of CRTV's Get Off My Lawn. Now, Gavin, I want to ask you how it all started, and then I've got a follow-up question about some language used by those on the right who were engaged in the scuffle. So, first and foremost, how did this all jump off? How did it all begin?
Well, you're jumping right to the very end. Is that what you're talking about? The fight at the end of the night?
The fight at the end of the night. Yeah. Oh, you could run through. You were doing a speech at the Metropolitan Republican Club.
I announced the Otoya Yamaguchi funeral ceremony, which is obviously tongue-in-cheek, on Tuesday. That's when the harassing phone calls started. They're insulting and threatening the venue. Then on the night before, the venue is vandalized, windows smashed, locks glued shut, graffiti on it, a manifesto on the door threatening, this is only the beginning and we are not civil. Then we get there, they're harassing people. There's a massive fight that no one in the media is talking about, where about 10 Antifa jumped on a reporter, a sort of a citizen journalist, beat the crap out of him, took all his stuff. They were caught by a guy named Gavin Wax, who works at a magazine called The Spiel. He tackled them. The police got involved. They arrested those three guys. Those were three Antifa protesters beating up a random journalist because they didn't want to be photographed. So then I do the talk, yelling, screaming, harassing everyone. We get outside. They're all being chased and yelled at as they leave. The police have to escort them. Eventually, the Proud Boys are told, you guys have to stay inside. You're too dangerous. It's too risky. So they stay inside for half an hour. Eventually, they're escorted out with a police escort. Honestly, about a cop per person, it seemed.
Yeah.
And, before they did that, I left. And I came out, I had a plastic sword, and I was taunting them, going,
okay, now let me ask you about that, because the media is reporting that you had a samurai sword, and it was a real sword, and you were brandishing a weapon in Manhattan, and you should have been arrested. So it was a toy sword?
The toy sword I used for the comedy sketch inside. That's how insane all these people are. A broken toy sword that I got at a toy store. And I'm joking, Otoya Yamaguchi, the nationalists who killed the socialists in 1960.
Right.
And then this bottle of urine at me. They were throwing bottles of urine. So then the Proud Boys are eventually allowed to leave. They have the police with them. The crowd, it's 20 guys. So some start to go a little longer behind than others. Then three of the Antifa who had been bugging people all night finally get their chance. They ambush these two stragglers at the back, take one of their MAGA hats, which they call scalping, and then they got beat up. The Proud Boys turned around and started beating them badly. And then other Proud Boys were saying, stop, pulling them off. The police show up within, I'd say, 5 to 10 seconds, like instantaneously, because they were already there. These guys were just at the back of the line. They break it up, send everyone away. The end.
All right, now, to play devil's advocate, what appeared to be a couple of the Proud Boys apparently were caught on camera using pejoratives for homosexuals, things of that nature. So talk to me a little bit about that, and if it did happen, and the context is correct, doesn't that enable the left, doesn't that just play into their narrative?
Yeah, it's a terrible thing to say. If I had a time machine, I'd tell them to avoid, like, if someone steals your hat, just let them keep it. Not that I control these guys. I'm the founder, not the leader. But yeah, it's a terrible word to use. But, you know, when someone's adrenaline's pumping, he's going to say, are you brave now? F word.
Right.
He didn't mean it like it was some sort of homosexual attack. But that is why these guys were there all night. They were begging for the optics of that moment so they could take this one 4-second part and then ignore the days and days of abuse and terror that Antifa was inflicting on this club.
How many Antifa were there, Gavin, as opposed to how many Proud Boys and people on your side?
There was 20 Proud Boys. The total attendees of my talk is about 150 to 200. The press keeps getting that wrong. And out of Antifa, I would say there was about 100.
Wow. And what was the content and context of the talk? What were you speaking about?
Oh, I did the little jokey ceremony at the beginning where I killed my friend Ryan Katsu Rivera as the Japanese socialist, and I had a Sapporo with me, and we poured some out for our dead homie. And then I just made fun of Antifa and socialists in there, and I joked around and said, what do they want? Like, I don't even understand what they want. They want to dismantle capitalism? How? Or who do they think we are? We want to commit genocide of trans people and disabled. How do you do that? Like, what's their logic? And we all just had a laugh at how totally illogical all their tropes are.
And how do you think this will play in terms of, what do you think is being communicated on the internet and other places, and what will the message be ultimately from what took place?
The DNC won the narrative on this one and have completely flipped it Freaky Friday style into being evil Nazi does evil talk about murder, and then a hate gang goes roaming the streets, beating innocent people, and eventually pummels some poor homosexual who was just going to get groceries.
All right, Gavin, in the 30 seconds we have left, give me 3 or 4 bullet points that if this clip were used on social media, you would promote to debunk what the left is saying. If you're saying it's false, rebut it.
I would say the clip you're seeing is terrible, but it is the culmination of 3 days of domestic terror from Antifa, where they just kept picking and picking and picking and trying to start a war. Eventually, they grabbed the wrong hat and got beat up.
All righty. Gavin McInnes, host of CRTV's Get Off My Lawn. Gavin, always great to see you, my friend. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, I'll let you make up your mind which version of events is most accurate.
And kicking people when they're lying on the ground. Gavin claims again and again that his little cult is not made up of racists and white supremacists. He can claim that until his face is fucking blue, but when his Proud Boys go into a place like when they went into Halifax and disrupted a memorial remembering of the Mi'kmaq Nation.
So I didn't know anything about this particular story, so I had to look it up, and this is from the CBC. Military personnel in Proud Boys incident return to regular duty. So apparently there were 5 protesters from the Proud Boys. Let me repeat that. 5 protesters. 4 of which were also part of the Canadian Defence Force, and 1 member who was an ex-member of the military as well. And they were counter-protesting the Indigenous people who were protesting a statue, I think, of the founder of Halifax. I'm not an expert on Canadian history. Forgive me if I get some of the details wrong. But apparently the founder of that area or that city or whatever had put a price on Indigenous scalps, hundreds of years ago when he founded that city or whatever. So that's what the Indigenous people were protesting, and 5, let me repeat that, 5 Proud Boys were protesting against them. I'm not exactly sure why. I don't know if they hate Indigenous people or they thought that they were defending the history of the area or white people or England, or who knows? I don't really know, but I don't know if 5 is proof that all the Proud Boys are white supremacists. And to be honest, I don't know the percentage of white nationalists in the Proud Boys. I don't know if it's high or low, but I think 5 protesters probably isn't a good sample size. I should also point out that there doesn't seem to have been any violence, and even if you argue that the 5 Proud Boy protesters were doing it in bad taste, and that's your right to make that argument. But even if you were to make that argument, it's still their right to go there and protest, even if it's in bad taste, even if they're wrong. And you'll note that they, at least to my knowledge, they didn't punch anyone, they didn't throw bricks at anyone, they didn't throw bottles of urine at anyone, they didn't set off fire alarms or vandalize anything or anything like that. And you know what? As much as I disagree with Antifa, if they had non-violent protests which didn't involve vandalizing people's cars and buildings and setting things on fire, I would support their right to protest. If they want to march up and down a street with banners saying capitalism is shit and, you know, I don't know, the patriarchy is real and anarchy is A-OK, I don't know what their banners would be. But if they wanted to do that, that would be perfectly fine, as long as they didn't fucking incite riots, which is what they typically do. Anyway, let's continue.
Claiming that this is a British colony and that the natives have no business there, with a bunch of British fucking flags. How can you still claim you're not fucking white nationalists? Yeah.
Okay, so I found some footage of the incident in question, and the entire thing lasted for a whopping 8 minutes. As far as I can tell, the entire thing was captured on video, lasting 8 minutes, and yeah, it was harrowing. It really was. Anyway, let's compare a couple of clips from that Proud Boys incident to some clips of Antifa.
You can put your arms down. You don't need to stand there.
You believe that?
We're just making I just say you don't need to tell.
So he's got to stand this way. A lot of rules. Got a lot of rules there.
All we're asking
You want to tell me your name?
instead of walking directly to the
Grant.
Nico. It's Grant there. It's Grant. It's Grant. Get that. Yes.
Hi,
Nice to meet you, Rob.
It's really nice to meet you.
Absolutely.
All we're trying to do is have a ceremony here. Ceremonies happen all the time, and this one is particularly important.
We're having one as well.
Great, and we're just asking, we'll respect your ceremony as long as you don't interrupt this specific
We're not here
space.
to rock. We're just walking up.
Great. All we're asking is that you go around instead of cutting through the crowd.
No, we're being
We're curious about what you guys were saying.
Exactly.
Great. You want to listen quietly?
That's all we're here for.
Great. Then let's listen quietly.
There, she joins us now. What's going on, Kel?
Well, Anderson, what you're seeing behind me is quite a bit of commotion. This is an event at Berkeley where Milo Yiannopoulos, who is known as an internet troll, a self-proclaimed internet troll, a very provocative speaker, he was invited here.
Sorry, what?
That's why you can't have
In Canada?
It's Canada.
Are you insane?
Can we quiet down, please?
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
Okay, so the respectful thing that we're trying to say is that this is the land of the Mi'kmaq, which predates Canada.
This is unceded Mi'kmaq territory.
And what we're trying to do today is have a respectful ceremony in remembrance.
We want
not
that.
bother you. Right.
Well, I mean, yeah, but like, was it always Mi'kmaq land?
Oh, yes, it was.
Did they ever come from anyone else? Was this?
No, it has always been unceded Mi'kmaq territory.
Before the land bridge there, right? Yeah. Was that after land?
The land bridge has been disproven, so you may stop.
Ceremony. You need to respect.
We're trying to listen. All I'm hearing is a lot of preaching. We want to get the ceremony.
Then let's listen.
Okay, so if the ceremony is going on, first keep it down. Keep it down. I'm trying to move. Keep it down a little bit. I'm trying to get the ceremony.
One of the ways that you can be respectful of this ceremony is by not displaying that flag.
I can't hear the ceremony.
You need to take the flag.
You can ask the flag down. Stop your yapping and start listening. That's what you're saying.
I don't want to see you. I want to listen to the ceremony.
Here to the campus, and you can see from the reaction, I'm going to step out of the shot here. What is happening here is that these are student protesters, some anarchists from what I can gather, and trying to breach the building right now. Oh! Back up! Watch out!
All right, come on. Let's go.
Calm down.
So we're trying to.
We're backing We're backing up.
You don't want to talk. You just want to bark and you want to chirp.
I want you to
turn my back against you. I'm gonna turn my back.
That's fine. The best way for this conversation to end is for us both to just walk in different directions.
She wants to walk with us to the next spot.
Okay. We'll go with a reasonable person.
Great.
Love it.
Thank you.
Now, can you see the difference between those two things? There's a little bit of a difference. It's a little bit subtle. I don't know if you picked up on it, but there was a slight difference between those two particular protests. Now, to be 100% fair, there was one person acting very, very aggressive during the Proud Boys protest. Here's the clip.
Am I kind of close to you? You're not like how close I'm getting to you?
Very close. You're very close.
I am.
The microaggression is much.
You want me to turn it into a macroaggression?
I wouldn't want that.
Do you want to find out?
Well, that'd be a start, probably.
Are you guessing or do you
Well,
want
that's not here to fuck around.
No, I don't want to. I'm here to find out.
Flex my flex. No.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah. The thing is, it wasn't a Proud Boy. It was one of the Indigenous protesters. Now, to be fair, she didn't throw punches at anyone. She didn't hit anyone in the head with a brick or set anything on fire. So, that's fine. Clearly, she's not a member of Antifa. Now, as I said before, you can disagree with the Proud Boys, but they still have the right to protest, and you have to admit they didn't set anything on fire or do any damage to anything or hurt anyone. Just as you may disagree with the Indigenous protesters, and once again, they didn't set anything on fire or punch anyone in the head or throw bricks at anyone or smash shop windows or anything like that. And I would argue that that type of disagreement is healthy in a healthy democracy. Democracies tend to be messy. They're filled with people with different opinions. Some of those opinions can be extreme. Some of those opinions can be wrong. In fact, many of them are. But people should still have the right to express them as long as they do so non-violently. Do you get the fucking point? Next.
Oh, by the way, Fred Perry wants you guys to stop wearing his polos. It's bad publicity. So the Proud Boys, they've got a little website. It almost looks kind of professional, I guess. They've got a Proud Boys store. Just in case you're missing a couple of lame racist t-shirt in your wardrobe, they've got everything you need. And as usual, they've appropriated already existing brands and designs, as white nationalist groups always do.
Do they? I mean, I honestly don't know. I don't keep up to date on what white nationalists are doing. But is this a common white nationalist thing? I have no idea. Oh, and by the way, this is the point in the video where she just starts making rather pointless arguments. So you have been warned.
I don't know what it is with fucking racists and white nationalists that they have zero original ideas. They're fucking unable to come up with anything new. All they do is fucking take brands that already exist, logos that already exist, and they just rewrite their names in it. How fucking original. They security t-shirt for when they go on rallies and beat up people. Just...
Okay, so one of the reasons the Proud Boys were formed is to respond to the violence of Antifa. As I said earlier in this video, if Antifa didn't exist, or to be more accurate, if they weren't so publicly committing acts of violence, then chances are the Proud Boys wouldn't exist either. So I'm assuming the security shirt is for those Proud Boys who go to protests and then respond to violence from Antifa. Now, ultimately, I don't think this is a solution. I think that violence only begets more violence, and I think it's only a matter of time before someone brings a gun to one of these protests and there's some kind of mass shooting. I'm kind of shocked it hasn't happened already because, well, there's a lot of gun violence in America, as we know, and these protests tend to be very, very heated on both sides. And all it would take is one lunatic who's, just a little bit unhinged, and the next thing you know, there's a mass shooting on your hands. But if you're going to accuse the Proud Boys of being violent, then you have to do that in its proper context. And although I don't like any type of violence at protests, the proper context of the Proud Boys' violence is in response to Antifa's violence.
Just in case that this isn't clear enough yet that this is a fucking cult, that this is a fucking religion, basically, that these people worship. You can all wear the same fucking gear, look exactly the fucking same, and all worship your god.
Have you seen Antifa? They tend to dress all exactly the same. I don't know if you've noticed that. Apparently not.
A fucking loser, Gavin McInnes. On their website, Gavin has stated what Proud Boys stand for.
Well, I think it's good that they're standing for something because, if they were sitting, I guess they would be accused of manspreading, and we all know what a problem that is.
Because it's his cult, and he gets to decide that kind of stuff. That's kind of nice, actually. If I had a cult, I would state my own rules, and I would fucking ban Nickelback and Coldplay.
I might actually consider joining a cult which banned Nickelback and Coldplay. Does someone want to tell her that she's already part of a cult, by the way? That could be an amusing conversation.
And to join the club, it's pretty easy, and everything is stated in the website. So, like all cults and libertarian groups, there are rules you must follow.
Like all cults and libertarian groups, there are rules you must follow. Yes, because they're the only ones that have rules. That's how you tell if something's a cult or a libertarian group, because they got rules that you have to follow. That's the one requirement for them to be a cult or a libertarian group. Yep. Spot on.
It's kind of like college or like high school. There's a little bit of hazing, a little bit of initiation. 4 degrees, 4 rules.
The first rule of Fight Club is...
You have to publicly declare that you're a Proud Boy. You're so original, you had to actually steal the first rule of the AA meetings.
Really? That's the first rule of the AA meetings? You have to proudly declare that you're a Proud Boy? That seems a bit strange. Now, look, I'm no professional alcoholic. It's only a part-time hobby for me, so I've never been to an AA meeting. But yeah, I'd be surprised if the first rule of AA is that you have to declare that you're a Proud Boy. Have they been colonized by the Proud Boys? Is that what's going on? But seriously for a minute, I think the reason why the Proud Boys have to declare that they're a Proud Boy is in the name, right? Because they're proud of their masculinity. I don't think they ripped off AA. I think the simpler explanation might be the correct one.
Second rule of Fight Club is...
You must get the crap beaten out of you by at least 5 guys until you can name 5 breakfast cereals.
Now, I do realise it is a very, very strange world out there, and it's filled with people with strange views, and they do strange things, and We've all seen shit like that on the internet. So I accept that this may actually be a serious rule, but when I hear something like that, I have to seriously consider that it's Gavin McInnes just trolling the media. The fact that you have to name 5 breakfast cereals, to me, cries out that it's trolling. And the fact that the media has swallowed it without any critical thinking or questioning or even considering that maybe this is trolling, I think speaks a lot about the media. Now, a very similar thing happened recently on the Young Turks. I think the easiest thing is just to play a little bit of a clip.
I came across this story regarding white supremacists who chug milk because of a scientific study they came across, and I thought it was amazing. So apparently there was this one study. Let me give you the details. So there's one scientist who wants to draw attention to how the scientific evidence and data is being misinterpreted. One slide that he's folded into his recent talks depicts a group of white nationalists chugging milk at a 2017 gathering to draw attention to a genetic trait known to be more common in white people than others, the ability to digest lactose as adults.
That's your big thing that you're holding on to.
No, but it's amazing.
Congrats.
No, hold on, but no, okay. So I get the serious part of this story, but like
losers, total losers.
Let's just have a little bit of fun for a second.
Okay, I can drink milk as an adult.
No.
Congratulations! You want cookies with it?
It's so good. It's so good. Okay.
Who cares?
Exactly.
Who cares?
Okay, so Shia LaBeouf last year had some sort of event. And it was about, basically responding to all of these alt-right trolls or whatever it is. And these guys show up with like gallons of milk and they're like chugging the milk, interrupting the stream. Now, look, I think it's partially a joke, but I think part of it is also this like obsession with showing everyone how proud you are of being a white dude.
Oh, I see. You think it's partially a joke. Well, here's a rule to live by on the internet. If you come across something which is so strange and so stupid that it seems like trolling or a joke, there's a fucking good chance that it is. Now, to my knowledge, this chugging white milk or drinking white milk by white supremacists thing started on 4chan as a joke, and elements of the media just took it and ran with it in an attempt to make white supremacists seem stupid. And let's face it, if white supremacists did actually believe this, or if there are some that do believe it, then yeah, they're fucking idiots. But my point is that elements of the media don't critically look at it. They don't consider that maybe they're being trolled, that maybe this is a joke, that maybe they're being taken advantage of, because they're too desperate to make their opponents look like idiots. Now, to be fair, there are crazy people on the internet who believe crazy fucking things. There's people who pour bleach up the assholes of their children in an attempt to cure them of autism. And then we have groups like the Nation of Islam. I remember someone giving a speech for the Nation of Islam once, and he said he had proof that white people were not native to the planet Earth, and that's because they get sunburnt. And if a creature had actually evolved on the planet Earth, then they wouldn't be able to get sunburnt, would they? Yeah. And of course, there's flat earthers and all kinds of things. So yes, I do acknowledge that there are crazy fucking beliefs out there, but you got to be cautious, and if it seems like trolling, there's a fucking good chance that it is. And maybe someone should tell the Young Turks that, right?
And so I'm going to show you the video because it's amusing. Take a quick look.
Do you want to be here? I'll carry you right now. Go. instead of assault between strangers.
I'm the lumberjack, and that's okay. I drink my milk and I work all day. Down with the vegan agenda. Yeah. Even an ice cold glass of pure racism. Get it down here. Good enough. Listen, if you're not doing neck workouts, you're a cock. If you don't have a neck harness, you're a. Look, if you're squat 315, you're. I can't talk to you. You may not like it, but this is peak masculinity right now. Look at this. This is the form. Let me professional for the Olympians. This is true
Now, these individuals reportedly chugged their milk in protest at nighttime to avoid any potential sunburn. Cenk.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, that's your superior race. Apparently, milk does not do a body good.
I didn't know Alex Jones had a son. That peak masculinity guy.
Okay, there's a lot of peak masculinity in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so the Young Turks don't get trolling. Why am I not surprised? Next.
This is a kinky club. The other half of the second rule is hashtag no wanks.
Hashtag no wanks. Now, no wanks is not to be confused with a different group, which is no mass. Now, no mass might sound like an anti-masturbation group, but in actual fact, it's an anti-masculinity group, and it's actually a group of male feminists. What a surprise. Now, as much as I think the anti-masturbation rule from the Proud Boys is stupid, and once again, quite possibly trolling, who knows, I don't think it's anywhere near as harmful as something like the no mass group. Next.
Who knew hashtag no wanks was a fucking thing? This program. So this is like the AA program. It's a fucking program. You
really? AA doesn't want you to masturbate either? You're supposed to give up drinking and masturbation? Fuck. That's pretty tough. Good luck getting me to give up either. Fuck that.
Libertarians, your rules and your programs.
Are the Proud Boys libertarians? I mean, they're not to my knowledge, but as I've said in this video, I'm not an expert on them. But to my knowledge, they're not libertarians, so she seems to just be labelling them libertarians because? I don't know. But I would think libertarians, being libertarians, would be in favour of people masturbating whenever they wanted to. Well, you know, maybe not on the bus. But although that is a good way to get a seat by yourself. So I've heard.
A funny bunch. This program allows porn only once every 30 days and insists a man can only ejaculate if he is within 1 yard of a woman.
That is fucking stupid. I agree with Go Fem Yourself 100% here. That is fucking ludicrous. I mean, 1 yard, right? Fucking hell. Everyone knows it should be 0.9144 of a meter. Come on, America, get your fucking act together and get with the metric system. Come, a yard? Really? That's just fucking stupid.
With her consent. Consent, that's a nice touch, I gotta say. As a woman, as a femme, I'm sure when you guys put that in there, you were congratulating yourselves for putting that in there. The only thing is, the fact that you actually had to put that in the sentence it kind of implies that your members would maybe do something like this without someone's consent?
It implies that maybe their members would do this type of thing without their consent. Really? Now, could there possibly be another explanation for the inclusion of "with their consent" in there? Let's imagine for a second that that sentence was missing. Let's imagine for a second that it didn't include the sentence "with their consent." What do you think would happen when feminist journalists came to the Proud Boys website looking for dirt to scrape up on them? They would automatically assume that the masturbation within 1 yard... Sorry, let me correct myself there. That the masturbation within 0.9144 meters of a woman would be non-consensual, and they would conclude that the Proud Boys were promoting rape. So the inclusion of "with their consent" has clearly been put in there to stop dishonest feminist journalists from making false claims about the Proud Boys being pro-rape or promoting sexual assault of women and all this other shit. Now, despite the fact that they did put that in there, feminists like Go Fem Yourself still claim that they're pro-rape and rapey guys and all this other shit. Even though that sentence is clearly there, she's still making that claim. So they really can't win. If they don't put the sentence in there, then clearly they're implying that they're promoting the sexual assault of women. And if they do put it in there, well, that's clearly because their members are so rapey and so misogynistic towards women that they have to be told not to rape women. They're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. There's no way to win with feminists like Go Fem Yourself. Yeah, next.
Just the fact that it's there, it's at the very end of the sentence, it's almost like someone decided to add that at the very last moment. It just seemed kind of dodgy as fuck, actually.
So the end of the sentence was added at the very last moment. That's strange. I usually add the end of the sentence at the start, and then I do the start of the sentence in the middle, and yeah, I confuse myself a lot when I'm writing.
And the act, what is described here is kind of odd in the first place. Like, a yard, really?
Yeah, I'm fully on board with Go Fem Yourself on this. Like I said earlier, it should be 0.9144 of a meter. Come on, guys, get it right.
What? That rule is so fucking funny to me. All cult leaders try to control the sexual activities of their members.
Do you mean like political lesbianism? Is that what you mean?
Any woman who takes part in a heterosexual couple helps to shore up male supremacy by making its foundation stronger.
In 1979, the revolutionary feminists in Leeds wrote a manifesto, arguing that women would only be free if they stopped having sex with men.
Giving up fucking for a feminist is about taking your politics seriously. Women who are socialists are prepared to give up many things which they might enjoy because they see how these things tie into and support the whole system of economic class oppression which they are fighting. They will resist buying Cape apples because the profits go to South Africa. Obviously, it's more difficult for some feminists to give up penetration, which is so fundamental to the system of oppression which we are fighting.
The revolutionary feminists advocated what they called political lesbianism. This meant becoming a lesbian for political reasons, whether you fancied women or not.
We're heterosexual women who were on our side. But what I could never understand, and I did resent, was them going home to men at night. It just seemed such a contradiction. And often I would get very angry when I would challenge them about this, and they would say, well, that's just the way I am, I just don't fancy women, having no understanding at all of the fact that sexuality is a social construct and that We all make choices depending on the way that we want to live in the world we want to see.
And it seems when cult leaders are men, they try to control the sexual activity of their male members.
Control the sexual activity of their male members. Well, yes, my male member does tend to have a mind of its own, if I'm going to be honest. So yeah, I do try to control it. Oh, hold on, she wasn't talking about penises, was she?
That's how it seems to work. Like, the guy who's leading the pack, he has to tell the other guys, you can't have sex, you can't jack off, you can't watch porn for 30 days, buddy. And that is so fucking creepy to me that anyone would come up to someone else or a group of people and say, hey, I started a club. If you want to join my club, you have to stop watching porn, or you can only watch it once in a month. And you can't touch yourself anymore. #no wanks.
Now, I agree. If someone did come up to someone on the street and said, hey, you want to join my club, you have to give up wanking for a whole month. Yeah, that would be creepy, but the Proud Boys aren't doing that, at least to my knowledge. Okay? By all means, prove me wrong, but I'm pretty sure they're not walking up to strangers on the street and saying, hey, do you want to give up masturbation for the Proud Boys? This is one thing on their website, where someone has to go and read it. They have to agree with it before joining. They're not actively out in the streets forcing it on people. I'm not exactly sure why Go Fem Yourself is under the impression that they are.
And if you ejaculate, you've got to be within a yard of a woman. Let me tell you, if someone came up to me and told me from now on, you can't touch yourself anymore, and I'm going to tell you how and when you're going to come and how far away you've got to be from a man or a woman, I would tell them to go fuck themselves.
Yes, and that would be a perfectly reasonable response if a stranger did walk up to you on the street and say that to you, but that's not what's happening, is it? Let me give you a couple of metaphors. Let's say someone wants to go to a bondage club and be tied up and whipped for a couple of hours. That's their right, and, you know, if they get off on that, that's perfectly fine. However, if they were walking around the street trying to convince the random members of the public that they should do this, they may come across some angry responses, because those are two very different things. I can give you another example. Let's say homosexuality. I don't have any issue with someone being homosexual or being in a gay relationship or having gay sex. That's their choice. It's their lives. They should be free to do that if they want. But if they were randomly walking up to strangers on the street saying, hey, why don't you let me fuck you in the ass, they may get some angry responses. Because these are two very different things. There's a difference between someone seeking something out and actively doing it, and someone walking up to strangers and trying to force it on them. Two different things, Go Fem Yourself. Not exactly sure why you can't understand that.
And I would probably laugh so hard that I would be pissing myself. These guys are like self-proclaimed proud chauvinist men of the Western world, but they get to be told how many times they can watch porn and how and when they're allowed to ejaculate.
I personally think it's a stupid rule, but, you know, I'm not a member of the Proud Boys, and if someone wants to join the Proud Boys and they willingly agree to that, then it's their choice. Just like I think political lesbianism is stupid, but hey, if someone wants to do it out of their free will, right, free choice, then all the power to them. They should be able to eat as much feminist pussy as they want. They can eat it to their heart's content, as far as I'm concerned.
I don't get all these guys act all macho and shit, but then they go and say, dude, if you watch porn twice this month, I'm gonna kick you out of my club. And if you ejaculate farther away than 1 yard from a woman, you're not in our gang anymore and you can't sit with us. These guys are lame.
Did I just hear someone use an ableist term? Now, you're not a very good social justice advocate, are you, GoFem yourself? Using a term like lame. I mean, think of all the people out there who have a bad leg, right? Maybe it's not their fault. Maybe they were born that way. Did you ever think of that, GoFem yourself? I think it's time someone called the social justice police on her. I mean, if Sargon said something like that, he'd be called a Nazi.
Oh. Actually, there is an exception to this rule. Gay Proud Boys are exempt from hashtag no wanks because they are doing just fine for intercourse. Lucky you. And another thing to note, this club is men's only, but Gavin says you gotta be born a man. So he's a fucking transphobe as well. You guys rebrand your movement. You have new logos, but it's the same old shit that you do over and over again with a little hint of lameness added. Every single time. And then the third rule of Fight Club is you gotta get a tattoo that says Proud Boy. I swear to God, I've seen this font so many times in my life. This font sucks.
Okay, so she's now resorted to criticising the font that they use. Yeah, don't you love well-formulated feminist arguments? I mean, what would you call that? Criticising the font someone uses. I'm sure that must be a fallacy, right? Argumentum ad fontem or something? I don't know. I don't fucking speak Latin. What's Latin for a really fucking piece of shit argument?
It's been overused by fucking everyone. And finally, fourth degree. The fourth rule of Fight Club is you gotta fight some fucking people. And it's up to others to decide if you've reached the fourth degree. Or, if you get arrested, you automatically get fourth degree. Is that street gang enough for you? Do I hear thug?
Okay, I'm going to be serious for a minute, and this point I kind of agree with her on. If the Proud Boys are promoting violence, then yes, they should be criticised, just like Antifa should be criticised. Like I said right at the start, we should have a society without political violence. We should be able to discuss ideas and disagree with each other and respect the fact that we disagree with each other without throwing bricks and bottles and punching people. So yeah, this is fair criticism of the Proud Boys, unlike criticising what font they use on their webpage.
Yet, which would explain why these guys have no fucking trouble getting into fights, provoking people, beating the shit out of people. It's almost like they have something to gain from being arrested. So to become a Proud Boy, it's fairly easy. You gotta admit you're a loser. Then you gotta get the crap beaten out of you. Then you gotta stop wanking, watching porn. Then you gotta get a lame-ass tattoo with some boring fonts. And then you gotta get a criminal record. Sign me up, buddies.
Which is very different than the requirements to be a male feminist. To be a male feminist, all you have to do is be accused of sexual assault. Or so it would seem from the news recently.
Number 4, founder of white nationalist gang quits, denies being white nationalist. Last week it was reported that the FBI has classified the violent neo-Nazi gang, the Proud Boys, as an extremist group with ties to white nationalism. The next day, the founder and leader of the Proud Boys, Gavin McInnes, announced that he was quitting the gang, officially disassociating himself from the Proud Boys in all capacities forever. He added that he was doing so reluctantly because he believes it to be the greatest fraternal organization in the world. McInnes was apparently advised by his attorneys that quitting the gang would be helpful in obtaining lighter sentences for the 6 members of the Proud Boys arrested for assaulting protesters following a speech McInnes gave in New York City in October. McInnes also denied that the Proud Boys are a gang or an extremist group or have ties to white nationalists. It's not the first time McInnes has made such a denial. Denying the blatantly obvious fact that they are a gang of violent white nationalists is something members of the Proud Boys have been doing since they were founded 2 years ago. Long before the FBI classified them as such, the Southern Poverty Law Center identified the Proud Boys as an extremist hate group whose members are known to promote white nationalist rhetoric and take part in events alongside other hate groups such as the Ku Klux Klan. McInnes himself has written for white nationalist websites such as American Renaissance and VDare, and has a history of making grossly racist, misogynistic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, and transphobic statements, and proudly exhibiting many other varieties of bigotry and intolerance as well. In other words, whatever McInnes chooses to call himself, his words and his actions demonstrate that he is a neo-Nazi scumbag, and he founded a gang for other neo-Nazi scumbags. That's who the Proud Boys are. That's who they will remain, whether McInnes is officially a member or not. And people who accept his denial of violence and white nationalist connections at face value are either liars or suckers.